Welcome, UCL fans, to the unofficial review and ranking for the United Championship League Week 12. I am Nintendo Fanatic 64. I have watched all the matches, crunched the numbers, and come up with what I believe is a fair and accurate ranking system for the UCL. Now, I would like to mention, as I always do, that I am in no way affiliated with the UCL or any of its coaches involved. But if you would like to see me try and become the official one, let all the coaches know, tweet at them, tell them that you've seen this video, you like what you see. You want to have me be the official one by next season. I don't know. Maybe it will happen. But we're going to start off with the review of all 8 matches that took place this week. And I also want to mention that almost every single one of these matches this week, this was a very important week, have playoff implications involved with them. So a lot of teams were fighting to stay alive and make it to playoffs. Other teams are just trying to determine who can make it for sure in there. So, starting off first, we have the Toronto Tokakis, whose record was 4-7, taking on the Carolina Keldios, whose record is also 4-7. And this is the only match that took place this week that has no effect on actual playoff outcomes for it, but it's still an important match nonetheless. For this, it was a 5-0 victory for the Carolina Keldios. MVP of the match goes to Victini from the Carolina Keldios, who managed to get 3 KOs this week. From rest of these matches now, these are all going to have some form of playoff implications in them. I will mention them a little bit for it. So starting off, we have the Long Island Reggie Rockies, whose record is 6-5, taking on the Pittsburgh Pichus, whose record is 5-6. And this is a must-win match for Long Island to stay in playoff contention. If you have not actually seen, I even did a playoff predictions video or kind of playoff analysis video a couple days ago, sometime last week. I'll leave a link to the description, or I'll leave a link to that video in the description. You should go check it out. But basically, for Long Island, they would have to win all 4 of the next matches and count on 2 teams losing 3 of the next 4 matches in order to even make the playoffs. But with this match, it was a 2-0 victory for the Pittsburgh Pichus, knocking the Long Island Reggie Rockies out of playoff contention. MVP of the match goes to Keldio from the Pittsburgh Pichus, who managed to get 4 knockouts this week. Up next, it was the Bristol City Blazekins, whose record is 5-6, taking on the Durham Drudigans, whose record is 6-5, and it is in the same boat that the Long Island Reggie Rockies must win the next 4 matches and hope that 2 out of 3 teams lose out of the next 3 weeks. But unfortunately, this match was canceled due to unknown circumstances, and the win was awarded to the Bristol City Blazekins, so the Durham Drudigans are no longer in playoff contentions. After taking to Twitter and trying to learn about it, because there was no video explaining why the match was canceled, at least from the Durham Drudigans side of things, it appears as though the coach of the Durham Drudigans was going through some personal issues and was just unable to compete this week. Up next, we have the Philadelphia Alligators, whose record is 6-5, taking on the Newcastle Nido-Kings, whose record is 9-2, with the Philadelphia Alligators in a must-win situation, very similar to the Durham Drudigans and the Long Island Reggie Rockies. The Newcastle Nido-Kings, with a record of 9-2, must win 3 of the next 4 weeks to guarantee themselves a spot in the playoffs. It was a 5-0 victory for the Newcastle Nido-Kings this week. The MVP of the match goes to Magneton from the Newcastle Nido-Kings, who had 4 knockouts. So with those 3 particular matches, the Long Island Reggie Rockies, the Durham Drudigans, and the Philadelphia Alligators are no longer going to be able to have a chance at making the playoffs. Those were ones that I called wild cards because they had a potential of making it. They just had to hopefully hit certain requirements and hope that other teams would miss those requirements. Unfortunately, that was not the case this time. So the next 4 matches all have or actually 3 of the next 4 matches I'm going to be talking about are important to determine some of the other teams to guarantee into the playoffs. So, First off, we have the Bronx Bear Ticks, whose record is 8-3, taking on the South Beach Slow Kings, whose record is 2-9. It was a 6-0 victory for the Bronx Bear Ticks. MVP of the match goes to the Tornadus Therian as well as Manaphy, who both managed to get 3 knockouts this week. So now, next up, we have the New York Yankees. Record was 8-3, taking on the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose record was 2-8. And it was 2-9, I should say. My bad. Was a 2-0 victory for the New York Yankees. MVP of the match goes to Infernape from the New York Yankees, who managed to get 3 knockouts this week. Next up, we have the Tucson Terrakions, whose record is 8-3, taking on the Manchester Magnazones, whose record is 0-11. And it was a 2-0 victory for the Tucson Terrakions. MVP of the match goes to Crocodile from the Tucson Terrakions, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. Now, with those last 3 matches, the Bronx Bear Ticks, the New York Yankees, and the Tucson Terrakions are all in a playoff contention gridlock. All 3 of them have the same records, and since only the top 4 teams can make it into the playoffs, the only way that any of them are going to be guaranteed at this point is if one of them loses in the next 3 weeks, or if even if or hope that the Newcastle Nido Kings lose the next 3 weeks, and then all 3 of those teams can make it in. But it is hard to say what's going to happen. I'm going to cover more about what I think will happen after we finish off with everything else. But for the final match of the week, we have the St. Louis Rampardos with a record of 10-1, taking on the Tulsa Talon Flames, whose record was 5-6. And it was a 2-0 victory for the St. Louis Rampardos. MVP of the match goes to Vaporeon from the St. Louis Rampardos, who managed to get 2 knockouts this week. So that was the review and a little bit of the analysis on playoff stuff. Now we're going to go ahead and get into the rankings, where I'll talk more about the actual playoff implications with those. So starting off, ranked 16th this week with a record of 0-12 is the Manchester Magnazones. Up next at number 15, we have the South Beach Slow Kings, whose record is now 2-10, and with them they have a differential score of -29. At number 14, also with a record of 2-10, are the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose differential score is -21. At number 13, we have the Toronto Tokakis, whose record is 4-8, and a differential score of -16. At number 12, we have the Carolina Keldios, whose record is 5-7, and a differential score of -15. At number 10, we have the Tulsa Talon Flames, whose record is 5-7, and a differential score of -6. At number 11, we have the Bristol City Blazekins, whose record is now 6-6, and a differential score of -7. At number 9, we have the Philadelphia Feraligators, whose record is now 6-6, and a differential score of -3. At number 8, we have the Long Island Reggie Rockies, whose record is now 6-6, and has a differential of -3. At number 7, we have the Durham Druddigons, whose record is 6-6, and have a differential of 4. At number 6, we have the Pittsburgh Pichus, whose record is 6-6, and a differential of 8. Now, the next 5 teams that we would go on, their differential is the only thing right now that's playing a part in the rankings, at least as I have it. If they stay tied through the next several weeks, again, I have no idea how the UCL will be setting up for this, if the teams are tied, if they're going to do something special, if they're going to look at how they win, how they beat each other. We'll find that out in due time. But for 5th place, I currently have the Tucson Terrakions, whose record is 9-3, and their differential score is 14. At 4, we have the New York Yankees, also with a 9-3 record, and their differential score is 17. At number 3 is the Bronx Bear Ticks, whose record again is 9-3, but their differential score is 18. All right, so it's going to be between those three to determine who's going to actually make the playoffs. Like I said, if the week had ended now, it would be, in my opinion, the Bronx Bearticks and the New York Yankees. But again, since I'm not part of the UCL, I don't know how they're going to determine who will make it in if that was the way it ended. But at number 2, we have the Newcastle Nido Kings, whose record is now a 10-2 and are currently on a 10-game winning streak with a score of 25. And then finally, at number 1, we have the St. Louis Rampardos with an 11-1 record, and differential score for them is 33. Now, if the St. Louis Rampardos get another win this week, they are guaranteed to be in the playoffs, because it won't matter how much. If they lose the last 2 weeks, their differential score, I believe, is high enough that they will be able to guarantee and beating out any other teams. Now, as far as, like I was saying, with how the UCL might go about if there is a tie between the Tucson Terrakians, New York Yankees, and the Bronx Bearticks, if they go by differential, then the next 3 weeks, or the next 12, 13, 14, the next 3 weeks are going to be crucial, because every knockout will matter for those 3 teams. And of course, if they lose, that will definitely impact what's going to end up happening for the playoffs for it. In addition to that, that's only if the UCL goes by using a differential score, like how I am right now. If they do not, they might go by who defeated who during the regular season, in which case the New York Yankees defeated both the Bronx Bearticks and the Tucson Terrakians, and the Tucson Terrakians defeated the Bronx Bearticks. Bronx Bearticks were unable to defeat either one of those teams during the regular season, so they might put the New York Yankees and Tucson Terrakians in. But again, we haven't heard anything about this, and we still have 3 weeks to go, and these records, of course, can always change, because they said that only the teams with the best 4 records will actually make it into the playoffs. So the fact that there's a 3-way tie for 3rd and 4th place will only raise more questions if it stays that way over the course of the next 3 weeks, which again, in my predictions video, I believe those 3 teams have a good chance at keeping the same record, since they don't face each other. Of course, they already have once, but we'll just have to wait and see the outcome with it. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week. By the end of the season, I'll probably do another I'll do like a MVPs list. I'll do like a top 20 mons from all the teams, not just going from certain teams, and just to show how well the teams have actually played. But that won't happen until after week 15 is said and done with. But if you approve of this list, leave it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments section of the 3 teams I was talking about the most, between the Tucson Terrakians, New York Yankees, and Bronx Bearticks. Which of those 2 teams you want to see in it, or which team you don't want to see make the playoffs in it. Also, just let me know what you think of this, and let me know how I'm doing. I always appreciate the feedback. I do read all the comments in these videos. And like I said, tweet this out to the coaches. Maybe they can watch, and if they approve, maybe I can become official if they decide to do a season 2. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and take off for now. Thank you very much, and you have yourselves a wonderful day.